The A. Philip Randolph Institute, or APRI, is the senior constituency group of the AFL-CIO, and our union is tied to APRI historically. Here's a timeline that we're going to put up on the screen for you. In 1925, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was founded. In 1978, it merged with the Transportation Communications Union, or TCU, and then in 2005, TCU and IAM agreed to merge, and that merge was completed in 2012. Now, Cleola Brown is APRI's president. She's the first woman president, and we are so proud of her. We've been trying to get her here for a long time. I know you were here a year or two ago and did this great interview with Deirdre Koniewski.
Thank you.
So we said we have to get her back, so thanks for being here.
Thank you, Tanya.
I wanted to let you know that when I was looking up a lot of the history of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, I read about how the porters were in this bitter fight with the Pullman Company. And for 12 years, the company didn't recognize the porters. They had to fight for that first contract for 12 years. But they fought through and they got that contract. So what does that say about the determination and the resolve of the porters?
One thing I think that resonates from the history of the porters is that they understood that just getting the contract for themselves was not just about them. It was about all of the families that lived up and down the East Coast corridor, because African Americans who worked on the railway carried the news of what was happening for jobs, what was happening on the discussions about civil rights, and the connection to family. And these porters were used to putting up and putting out, putting up with just about any kind of adversity that they met, but remaining very dignified because they represented a new chapter in the legacy of how is it that you work with dignity and you work with pride.
You know, I've heard you say that money cannot buy dignity and
No,
respect.
it can't. No, it cannot.
And I would think that that should be easy for people to understand in companies.
Well, I come out of a factory, all right, and I can only speak plainly and directly. I don't know how to dress it up, shine it up, and make it sound pretty. That's not who I am. But one thing that every worker who's ever worked in a plant or a factory or even in an office format understands is that when you walk through the door at your employer's business place, you should not leave your dignity at the door for a paycheck. It doesn't work like that. That's why unions are so important. We are able to negotiate for our rights. We are able to negotiate for benefits, but we are able to remain who we are, true to ourselves, and representing who we are in a very proud way. And our work should never diminish that. The size of a paycheck should never diminish that.
So how did A. Philip Randolph, did he fall into this leadership position, or is it something that he was doing behind the scenes?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Because we don't talk about him enough. Yes, we have to educate people who don't know about him.
Randolph's parents from Florida. His father was a minister. His mother was traditional, a housewife, watched the kids, the rest of it. Very strict disciplinarians, making sure that the kids were okay and that they were representing the community in the kind of lifestyle that every African American was striving for then. Because it was that period of time where we had to prove that we were just as good or better than, certainly better than what was being portrayed about the African American race. But Randolph was raised as an educated black man. And you know the difference, you know how sometimes, and I love teachers because I have a secondary education career myself, but teachers were taught to be above the rift. So he had been groomed to be just that. But the pride that he saw his father display as a minister, as a mentor, as a leader in the community is what grabbed him. So as he left Florida and went to New York, he did what was expected of him, which was to develop a paper called The Messenger that talked about everything that was going on in the community and to do the accepted step of becoming better than. But he also had the opportunity to meet some pretty incredible people. People who were working the railroad, who talked to him about pride, who talked to him about dignity, who talked to him about the struggle, and he was hooked. didn't have a dime to his name, because as an educator, just like today, it was a struggle to pursue education and have finances to do other kinds of things. Teachers are struggling even today. Yeah. But Randolph was smart enough to marry up. He married a woman who was a hairdresser, and you know, black women gonna get that hair done.
Yes.
And in getting to know her, he was able to even listen a little bit more intently to what the cause was that they were coming to him for. The Porters appreciated how he was able to express himself. They saw that he was a man that could speak with dignity and clarity. For whatever level the audience was at, Randolph had that communication skill to reach everyone. And they recruited him and taught him why he should be in the labor movement. So he didn't go after it, they went after him.
Now, when did he meet Bayard Rustin?
I guess it was about 6 years after he was actually into what he was to do in the organizing effort. You know, Bayard was a special individual, took no crap from anybody. Hope y'all are not offended by the word crap, because
I know we've said it twice during the show already.
That works for me.
I said it, you said it.
When he met Bayard, Bayard was the organizer, really. Randolph was the educator. Bayard was both smart, and he was also very concise. And as an openly gay man who never hid that for 1 second, he called to question the sincerity of equality to all. And there was nothing that Randolph liked more than a challenge. And he was always true to his word. When they met, they decided what was to be important in this movement towards social justice, not social service, because that was not the goal, social justice. And together they made the most dynamic duo that you can imagine.
Now, you made a point in your first speech as president to mention Bayard Rustin and the obligation of APRI to him. You got a pretty good response to that. Why was it so important for you to make sure that you mentioned that?
Well, for years, you know, Bayard had done a lot of things and given credit to a lot of people for the work that he actually performed, because the church plays a huge role in what African Americans will do on their strategies, on their buildings, and all the rest. And Dr. King, along with a number of other people who were involved in the movement, thought it best perhaps that he not be outright displaying who he was. And that was not the true sense of what the Institute was to be about. And to Randolph's credit, he said, Rustin is who he is, and because he is who he is, the institute that we're fighting to form and the practice of social activity and social rights and civil rights will come out of respecting everyone's right to be themselves. They used to hide him in the trunk of cars because ministers didn't want him in the church. He was never really asked to speak, but because he was so magnificent, they had to put aside those prejudices internally to allow his magnificence to come to the top. And God, are we lucky for it. But coming in as president, I knew right away that if I was going to be true to this job, I had to be true to all aspects of it. And you know as well as I do, the labor movement was not always warm and fuzzy to people who were from the LGBTQ community. And it took a while to even form Pride at Work.
That's right. I think it was something like 1994. Now that you bring up Pride at Work, what about the importance of making sure that all of us work together, no matter what constituency group we're in, that APRI works together with CPTU and works together with Pride at Work?
Well, I think it's important because it represents every aspect of who workers are, and to work together to address what is the primary principle and role for each worker, because they choose where they want to be an activist. We have to understand what each other does and respect that and help to grow that. Inside of APRI, for example, we have 4 brand new chapters across the state of North Carolina. And those are young activists who happen to be from the LGBT community. So they said, we love APRI, but we also want to be activists in the honor of Rustin, because he was not afraid, so they're not afraid. And my God, are they tearing it up. So I said, okay, cool. But what we're going to do, I'm going to put you with some of our Pride at Work activists, and let's see what we can do together to help this team and this movement grow inside of the Black community, which is a structure for APRI, inside of Pride at Work. We met years ago, my first year, as a matter of fact, with the National Board of Pride at Work. Some of my board members almost had a stroke. Because some of them were ministers, and they were like, we're going to meet with who?
So that stigma is still there, isn't
The
it?
stigma is still there, not to the degree that it once was, but we are a society that is learning how to be more accepting of all of our differences. And that's why it's important that we not hide it, that we put it right out here and say, this is what it is. Now let's deal with it. And that's in every respect, because women weren't exactly high-flying and up front and accepted and pushed either. Not in any of the organizations except CLUE, and we thought we were going to lose our jobs if we stood up inside a CLUE, but thank God for the women who put that piece together and fought really hard to recruit women from all of the unions to make that happen.
Powerful women.
Hey.
There's power in numbers.
Hey.
Well, we have a conference coming up pretty soon, next month.
Yes.
It's the 49th National Education Conference.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this theme, staying woke and fighting back.
Well, we try to stay relevant, and because we have a large group of young people, they keep this old lady right here on the top of the language that makes sense. So Stay Woke was a record that they were always singing and cutting up to, for lack of a better term. And when I listened to it very clearly, it was a message, a movement message inside the record. And that became our theme last year. And as we saw this administration roll its program out, we're a nonpartisan organization, but we are very particular. And we are particularly interested in making sure that the policies of this administration are impacted by our activism, which is to turn them around. So we are staying woke to what's going on, and we're still fighting because we don't give up.
So what do you hope to accomplish at this year's conference in terms of making sure that everybody has an action plan when they go back home?
Well, we decidedly pull the pieces that impacts our community the most and spend the time to explain it so that when we get the dialogue from our membership and leadership from around the country, we know exactly how it's playing out in the communities. I've never seen the media play such an active role in spreading the word, and not always a truthful word, of what is taking place. So we truth speak to what is doubly spoken to as far as policies are concerned. It's like from the time they started to talk about right to work, we all know and understand that it was right to work for less.
For less.
Okay? So we take the mystery out of dialogue like that and make it plain, so that when people are recruiting and talking to people in their communities about why it's important to be an activist, they can do it in a way that makes some sense. We teach folks how to speak to large groups of people. We teach folks how to maneuver in large meetings, so the parliamentary procedure becomes a way of getting a space in any space to speak, because it then calls for the dignity and respect of being heard. We teach young activists that they are just as important and their message means just as much as the elders.
And that is really important, because a lot of times young people may think that no one does listen to them, or older people are trying to tell them what to do.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
I know you're busy, and we're going to let you go, but before you do, we're going to look at some of these comments, because
Okay.
you're getting a lot of thumbs up here.
Oh, my.
From Pamela Robinson, Madeline Anderson, Dina Park says she loves that term, above the rift. She loves it. Rhonda Rogers says she loves your work and leadership. Jim Price says, Clay, I'm so proud to be on your board.
We're proud to have him. He's
Yes.
amazing.
And John Lacey says he's watching from the NAACP Labor Luncheon in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you, John, for watching. And a lot of great comments here. There are people watching from Arkansas. It looks like Annette Piscoya.
Oh, my.
All over. So thank you so much for being here. Is there anything
Thank
else you
you,
want us
Tanya.
to know
Well,
leading up to this
For
conference?
those of you who are not yet registered, we'll see you next year because we're oversold and the hotel is accepting nothing else. But I tell you what, because the machinist and Bob Martinez, who is absolutely an amazing leader, has been so supportive, we are going to be able to stream
Oh, good.
from the conference with the help of Jim Price, our board member.
All right.
We are going to be able to go, we can't do Periscope yet, but through the Media Cafe, we hope to have it up and running by the time we get done. So we encourage you to please tune in and watch us either make it good or mess it up, and you tell us how we can make it better. We love the audience that generates from APRI, but also from CBTU, from Pride at Work, from CLU, from Apollo. That's the family.
Well, I'm so sorry that I'm going to miss it this year, but I know we have a good Machinist Union delegation
Yeah, you
going.
do.
So I'm going to check out that stream.
Thank you.
When I can, and look forward to going next year.
Tanya, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Come back anytime.
I appreciate that.
And yeah, we'll have a part of the APRI conference next week. So if you would like more information, all you have to do is go to the website here. It's www.apri.org. That conference is the 8th to the 12th of August in Phoenix, and the theme is Staying Woke and Fighting Back. So we hope that anybody who has more information that they need to get it will go to this website right here and check it out. It has all the information that you want on A. Philip Roundolph Institute. Was I saying it wrong? Bayard? Is it Bayard Rustin?
Bayard.
Okay, see, I learned something today. It's Bayard Rustin and Cleola Brown. Check out apri.org.